All right, welcome everyone to tonight's webinar about what it takes to become a CPA and the pathways to becoming a CPA. This slide deck that I'm presenting tonight is part of the archives of the AI CPA, the American Institute of CPAs, and I'll actually be showing a couple of videos tonight about the profession and those working in the profession, and their videos put together by the Massachusetts Society of CPAs. So a lot of resources out there. This presentation is really going to provide you a lot of the wherewithal to understand where the resources are, what resources you need to be aware of, and again, the steps to take to become a CPA and the career path that's associated with being a CPA. So to start, what is a CPA? So a CPA stands for Certified Public Accountant. I am a CPA. It is a certification that is really known as one of the gold standards within the accounting profession. So there are a lot of steps that you need to take in order to become a certified public accountant. You can be an accountant. There are many accountants out there who are not CPAs. So, you don't need to necessarily have that certification to do accounting work, but there are certain elements of a career path that only CPAs can do. So I'll touch upon that a little bit throughout this presentation. Before I get into the requirements to become a CPA, I do want to share this relatively short video just to kick off this idea of what is a CPA, what jobs are associated with being a CPA. I think there's still somewhat of a misconception in the world of accounting that CPAs kind of follow this just very traditional type A personality, are really just at their desk crunching numbers all day. And that is really not the case. So I want to share with you, I'll end up sharing two videos today. Both, as I mentioned, were put together from the Massachusetts Society of CPAs. The first one is more current, and I'll just play this one to almost introduce you to some of the CPAs who are right in Massachusetts, who have taken the career path as being a CPA. So I'll share this one first. Oops, sorry about that.
Our clients.
So Rashida just shared that that might have not been the best quality of video. I'll make sure that it's posted for you in an external resource when we share this video out, this presentation. So that video, again, was really just introducing you to some CPAs in Massachusetts, and to change, we really are looking for ways to increase the diversity within the accounting profession, and to make sure that we really are attracting everyone to this profession in that sense. So the steps to become a CPA are really 3 elements, 3 E's to become a CPA. You do need to meet the education requirement, you need to take the exam, and you need experience working under a CPA. So I'll go through some of the slides that discuss those different elements, but some of the resources here that you'll have available to you are the state requirements. So each state does have a different set of requirements to meet this educational exam and experience requirement. The education, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is becoming pretty standard across all states that you do need the 150 hours of credits at the higher education level. What those classes entail does vary state by state. So it is important that if you are looking to become licensed in a particular state, that you understand the requirements in that state and to make sure that you're meeting the education requirements in that state. So for example, in Massachusetts, you do need to have a specific class in taxation, a class in audit, classes in financial reporting, class in IT, right? There are certain requirements under that 150-hour umbrella that you do need to make sure that you've met. And that's where the states really vary. The exam itself is a uniform national exam. So whether or not you take the exam in Massachusetts or California or in anywhere in between, it's the same exam that you're taking. So when you register for the CPA exam, it doesn't change state by state. And the experience does change by state. So some states require 1,000 hours working under a CPA. Some don't require any hours. It really depends on the state. So this is a resource for you to look at your state. So that's the jurisdiction that you're under, to make sure that you are going into your education in particular in a way that is meeting the requirements for the state that you're taking the exam. The exam itself, once you take the exam, right, you've met the education requirements, and then once you become actually certified, you've met the experience requirements. Once you're a CPA in a particular state, you do have reciprocity between all states. So I am a licensed CPA in the state of Massachusetts, but I can practice as a CPA in other states. I just have to pay their license fee, right? I don't have to take the exam again in each of the states that I want to practice as a CPA in. Once you pass the exam, once you're a certified public accountant, then you can transfer that state to state and work in multiple states or move to different states, and your CPA license still maintains. So from an education standpoint, again, as I said, it really does vary state by state. At this point, all states and the majority of US owned territories are requiring that 150 semester hours. So most students graduate with an undergraduate degree with 120 credits and then are seeking an additional 30 credits to meet that 150 credit requirement. So most of the time, it makes more sense for a student to obtain those additional 30 credits by obtaining a master's degree. It's recommended that students do that master's degree in accounting because that's the area of profession that you want to work in. You're looking to sit for the CPA exam. So it often makes sense to obtain those 30 credits with a master's in accounting, but that's not required to obtain the 150 semester hours. Some students, I've had some students who have been able to achieve the 150 semester hours during their undergraduate degrees. So you can technically have all undergraduate credits and meet the requirements of the 150 semester hours and meet the requirements by your state in terms of specific accounting classes or business classes that you need. But I'd say the most common path is you complete your undergraduate degree with 120 credits and then go on and seek a master's degree for the additional 30 credits. My recommendation is that 30 credits should be a Master's of Science in Accounting. However, that is not required. You can obtain an MBA. You can do something outside of the accounting space if you want to obtain those additional credits. But again, you have to make sure that you're meeting the number of accounting credits specific to your state. So, you know, it varies between accounting and business classes that you do actually need. So again, this is something, if you're thinking about becoming a CPA, if you're in your undergraduate careers now, you're finishing your 120 credits, even if your undergraduate degree is not in accounting, there are ways to still obtain the accounting requirements, getting to that 150 hours in a master's degree. So that's something else to think about if your undergraduate degree is in more of a business space. You didn't realize that, you know, accounting may be a career path for you and you do want to seek out the CPA. Again, looking at a Master's of Science in Accounting program for you might make sense to try to obtain your state's required accounting courses and, you know, get that education experience in order to meet the requirements. So there are different ways to do this. This is when, you know, a lot of times, especially if you're looking at master's programs, to reach out to the admissions department, to the program directors, and really talk about the credits that you earned during your undergraduate degree, kind of your career path that you're looking to obtain, including the CPA exam, and really the best way to go about obtaining those credits. So the CPA exam is a computer-based format. So you go to a Prometric testing center and you actually have to sit and take the exam in a testing center. So you register for the exam, you've met the accounting requirements to sit for the exam, and you start taking the sections. So there has been a change in the CPA exam requirements beginning this year, 2024. I kept the old sections in here just because I think that there's still a lot of study materials that are still focused on these 4 sections. So I wanted to make it really clear about the changes. So the auditing and attestation section of the exam, AUD, that's still the same. That hasn't changed. It's the BEC section that has gone away. So I'll get back to that one. So the second one you can cross off. It no longer exists. The financial accounting and reporting is still a section, and the regulations. So regulation is made up of law, legal issues for accountants, and taxation. What the CPA exam has now done, which I love, I think it makes so much sense, is in the past, this BEC section used to be almost a catch-all for a lot of concepts that didn't really fit into audit, didn't really fit into financial accounting and reporting, didn't fit into legal issues or taxation. And this BEC just became, again, this catch-all. And kind of, if you didn't know where something accounting related belongs, it went here. What they've done now instead, they're giving candidates options of what exam they want to take as their 4th exam. So now you can choose if you want to focus more on tax. You can take a 4th exam focused on tax compliance and tax planning, or, so that's that exam, the acronym is TCP, it's tax compliance and planning. Or you can focus on business analysis and reporting, So that's called bar. That gets into your ratios, more high level financial accounting and reporting. I would say my background, that would have been the section that I would have chosen, because when I took the exam, I was working in public accounting. I was an auditor. I was really heavily into doing the analysis and financial reporting. I'm not a tax accountant, so I wouldn't have chosen that fourth exam covering tax compilation and planning, right? So you can kind of choose your fourth career path. And then the third exam that you could choose from as your fourth would be Information Systems and Controls. This acronym is ISC. This is for people who are looking to go into more IT accounting, so information technology, looking at even internal controls if you want to be an internal auditor. So looking at the systems and the controls, which, you know, is another career path that you can consider. So I think it's really good news that you have the three kind of core exams, right? Audit, financial reporting, and regulation. And then the fourth exam, again, you get to choose which one you want to take. They are brand new this year, those three that I've described, replacing BEC. So we'll see what the feedback comes. We're in April now, so those, you know, first round of students who have taken these exams will start to see, you know, the reporting behind them. But as far as I know, you know, one is not easier than the other, because I think then we'll start to see some people, you know, skewing toward a certain section. So it's not meant to be, you know, one section's easier or more difficult than the other. It's more just to align your interests in the career path that you plan to go into as a CPA. So I love it. I think it's a great change to the CPA exam. You're still taking the 4 exams. It certainly hasn't made this any easier by any means. But now, again, you have that choice to take. So like I had mentioned before, it is the same test no matter where you take it. So I took the exams in Massachusetts. If you're taking them in Texas, there's no change. It's a uniform exam. It's a national exam. When the scores come out, all the scores are released nationwide. So you do not get your score immediately after you take the exam. This is something that you do have to wait for, which is agony waiting for the scores to come out. You do need to earn at least a 75 on the exam in order to pass. So anything below a 75 is considered failing the exam, and it is on a 0 to 99 scale. The questions on the exam are made up of multiple choice, simulations, and written communication. So they're called testlets that you move through. And again, you're answering multiple choice questions. The simulations are meant to simulate some type of accounting practice. So maybe you're putting together some type of consolidation, and there's a workbook that kind of emulates something like Excel. It's not Excel, but you know, it has some of those features, you know, and you're trying to show the examiners your understanding of how to actually do this type of work. And then a written communication could be some type of memo that you have to write, or your explanation of understanding something that you know, you've interpreted looking at the accounting pronouncements. And then again, the eligibility to sit for the exam does depend on those state requirements. So you can typically sit for the exam after you've completed your 120 credits in an undergraduate degree. Some states require specific accounting classes that you've had in business classes before you can even sit for the exam. But a lot of states do allow you to sit for the exam with your undergraduate degree. And then in order to become certified, you do need to get that 150 credit hours and the experience. So I'll let you know that when I was sitting for the CPA exam, we had to wait to sit for the exam until we had the 150 hours. A lot of students still decide to do that, but the choice is really yours. If you've met the requirements to actually sit for the exam before obtaining your graduate degree, that's fine. A lot of students typically choose to finish their education requirements and then sit for the exam, but really it depends on where you're at. There are some firms, the public accounting firms, that will not let you start with them until you have the 150 hours. So they won't even hire you until you have the education requirements behind you. So it really depends on, what your goal is. Sometimes it depends on what your firm that you might have an opportunity to work at is requiring to determine when you sit for the exam. So that becomes part of the strategy too, just figuring out what makes sense, kind of pursuing a master's degree, sitting for the exam first, whatever the case is. So in terms of the experience requirement, the other E, so we had the education requirement, the exam requirements, and now the experience requirements. You are considered a candidate when you apply for the CPA exam. And when, let's say you've completed all of your education requirements, you've passed all 4 sections of the exam, some states still require that you work under a CPA for 1 to 2 years. This varies state by state, so you do have to understand the education requirements for your state. This has changed a bit from when I was taking the CPA exam. Before, you had to work in public accounting. Like, that was the requirement, that you had to work for a public accounting firm. Now you just have to work under a CPA. So you could be working in private accounting and still working under a CPA. So that's something that you want to think about as you're going through this testing. Are you obtaining that experience that you need? Because you can be doing that simultaneously, right? If you're working and you're pursuing your master's degree and you're going to sit for the CPA exam, you should be looking to work under a CPA to start to obtain those education, those experience requirements. Because what I would hate to see happen is you got all of the education done, you pass the exam, and now you have to wait a year or 2 in order to obtain the experience in order to be called a licensed certified public accountant, right? So until you've met that requirement of experience, you're not a CPA yet. But this is something that you could be doing before you've passed the exams, before you've completed your education requirements. So I typically tell students, if the CPA path is what you're thinking of, really get yourself in a work position that you are working under a CPA. It will help tremendously, just because the experience requirement is, hopefully one of the more easy to kind of check off your list. And you want to make sure it's a profession that you want to be working in. So, working under a CPA is really the place to make sure of that. So again, you can click on some of these hyperlinks. The licensure does come from your state. So I am licensed in the state of Massachusetts, and some states do have a requirement that you sit for an ethics exam. So Massachusetts does not require that as a separate exam. As part of my continuing professional education, I am required to obtain, the additional education every 2 years and have 4 hours of ethics education. But in Massachusetts, we don't have an ethics exam. Connecticut does. So you just have to make sure, if you're in a state that does have that additional ethics exam requirement, that it is something else that you consider. Now, once you become certified, there are some additional things to keep in mind. So at this point, in order to maintain your license, you have met the education, you've met the experience, you've met the exams, right? You are now a CPA. In order to maintain your license, you do need to continue your professional education. So very similar to what you hear teachers and other licensed professionals have. We call it CPEs. Some people call it like CEUs, continuing education, something. For maintaining your CPA license, this also varies state by state. So Massachusetts is where I maintain my license. So every 2 years, I need to renew my CPA license. If I don't do that, I'm no longer a licensed CPA. So I've done all that work, right? And if you don't maintain your continuing professional education and renew your license every 2 years, you will lose your license. So in order to obtain the 40-hour requirement, it's every 2 years you need 40 hours. So however you break this out, 21 year, 20 the next, whatever the case is, you have to go to certain professional trainings that give CPE credits. So not everything does. So you have to kind of be mindful, and it can be expensive to maintain this 40 hours. Oh, and sorry, I said this wrong. It's 40 hours per year, so 80 hours every 2 years, not 20 and 20. I'm getting ahead of myself. So it's 80 hours total every 2 years, 40 hours per year. So that's a lot of hours for continuing professional education. And like I said, it can be expensive to maintain this. There are free CPEs that, let's say this is an AICPA presentation. The AICPA sometimes has free webinars that you can obtain CPEs. The Massachusetts Society, different state societies may have additional, free education. Going to different conferences, if it's CPE eligible, sometimes it's not. So you do have to be careful when you're maintaining this, that a conference that you're going to is CPE eligible, and you have to contact them. And then you do get a certification saying how many hours of CPE credits you've earned from going to that conference. Like I said, in Massachusetts, I'm required to maintain 4 hours of ethics training and compliance every 2 years. So I do need to do specific training in that area. Otherwise, you can choose the continuing professional education that you want to acquire. So, they definitely make this tailored to the area of accounting that you are going into. So again, you do have to renew this every 2 years. So there are different affiliated memberships. I'm going to promote the AICPA student affiliated membership. We're not affiliated in the sense of, they're not paying me to have you become a student member. But I do believe in student memberships for CPA associations. So the AICPA is a great one. The Massachusetts Society of CPAs I'm very familiar with. They are an amazing group. And the idea as a student is the more you can start understanding the different networks, the different just publications that are coming out in the profession, the different, again, newsletters, different conferences that even as a student you may be able to attend. I do think that all of this sets you up for success in the profession as a CPA. Again, the AICPA has this affiliation for students. I think it looks awesome on a resume to say that you're an AICPA student member, but not to have it in there to actually partake in the different student activities that they are providing I just think it's really great. It gets you into that headspace of what's going on in the profession, and a really good place to just start building your resume and your network. I mentioned the Massachusetts Society of CPAs, which I'm affiliated with. They have their society. They also have a student society there. So there are state organizations, right? Each state has a CPA society. And then there's the State Board of Accountancy. So when you actually register for the CPA exam, you are registering through the National Board of Accountancy. It's NASBA. That houses everything, right? All different states. And then each state, again, has its society. And then the State Board of Accountancy is the group that actually issues your license and makes sure that you've met the state's requirements to become a CPA. So the state society is more of a place to obtain accounting information, to network with different CPAs in the region. They have a lot of different networking events, different CPE type conferences, and again, more of a place to build your knowledge and network and grow as a CPA, where the State Board of Accountancy in Massachusetts is the group that is actually issuing the license. That's where I'm renewing the license and so on. And then there's the state societies and then the AICPA. So the AICPA is a national organization. They are the ones who are actually putting the questions together for the CPA, but they are considered, nationwide, this organization. And then, we break down into the state level. So just to recap on the steps to become a CPA, need that education requirement, get to that 150 hours, the exam, right? 4 parts, 75 or higher, and then your experience requirement as a CPA, working under a CPA. So those are the steps for sitting for the CPA exam. To become licensed, right, you need to meet all 3 of those E's: education, experience, and exams. And then there may be that additional requirement that, again, depends on the state. They might throw in that small extra ethics exam. Then once you're certified, you need to maintain your continuing professional education. And in Massachusetts, again, we're required to maintain 80 hours of CPAs every 2 years and renew our license every 2 years. And this varies by state. And then beyond, as a professional, I do join the state societies. I'm a member of the Massachusetts Society of CPAs. I'm a member of the American Institute of CPAs. I get their newsletters. It's a great way for me to what's going on in our state, what's going on in our country from an accounting and CPA standpoint. And then you kind of specialize in an area that you really are more focused in. So I'm an educator, I'm really interested in, what academics are doing in the nation. So I belong to the Accounting Academic Association, right? So that's an area that I'm specialized in, making sure that we're doing best practices in the classroom and so on. So you're able to become members or, join groups that specialize in the area of accounting that you are going into or are in, to make sure that you're staying on top of best practices. So the takeaways are certainly to understand your state's requirements. Take it one step at a time. It can be a little bit confusing, what to do first. This recommendation really says focus on the education requirement, kind of get that out of the way, and then sit for the CPA exam. They have gained the required experience as the last step. I don't see any reason why that can't be done, especially when you're pursuing a master's degree, to be working in the field under a CPA, to really try to do that. If you're working anyways and you can gain that experience during that time frame, I think that that's the best approach to take. So again, there's a lot of resources out there. We have the website for college students. The ACPA has that. Just a bunch of information. Different links are posted here for you to just check it out. I would go to thiswaytocpa.com as really your landing page and start looking around for the student items that they have for you to take a look at. And I really highly encourage you to become a member, a student member, to get a lot of those resources right in your hands. These are the other resources for you. Again, on the AICPA's direct website, directly for candidates. The NASBA, the National Association, has where you will actually sign up for the CPA exam, your state's jurisdiction and the requirements and so on. So a lot of information out there. I, again, highly recommend for you to work with admissions and directors of accounting programs to help you with the steps to do this, because it can be overwhelming without really the right support. So this webinar was really to give you that additional information behind becoming a CPA, how to do it, and then to know that the career pathways are really promising in this profession, and having that CPA title after your name, we like to say, gives that instant credibility. They know, employers know what you needed to do in order to obtain that. You know that you're coming from a strong education background, you have the experience, you've passed these exams, which are very difficult. And you know, I always say some of the smartest people that I knew couldn't necessarily pass the exams because they're really study intensive. And I think when I see CPA behind somebody's name after their name, I know that they have what it takes in terms of motivation, organization, you know, staying on top of the exam sections and when you're going to take exams, and the discipline to sit and study for this exam. You know, of course, there's all the accounting knowledge that goes behind it, but as knowing what I went through to study for the exam, and knowing what colleagues of mine have needed to do to become a certified public accountant, when I see those letters, I know that that would be a person I'd either want to work with or hire, you know, or be part of my accounting network. You know, just it comes with a lot of, like we'd say, that credibility because of what it takes to get to that point. So I hope that you found this helpful. Like we said, I did have another video I was going to share, but just because I'm not sure how it will come across to you on the screen, I don't want to necessarily play it right now, but I think we could probably post it as a link when we post the link to this series so you can have a chance to watch it. But otherwise, that is the presentation for this evening, the steps to become a CPA, that career path in public accounting. So thank you for joining us, and please reach out to myself or Rashida with any questions that you have about our Masters of Science in Accounting program. We do have it really set up to have a pathway specific for students who want to go into public accounting, who want to pursue the CPA exam. So our program is designed to help students meet that educational requirement. Very mindfully, we've looked at the different states, and you know, the classes are really aligned with the CPA sections that I've shared with you. So it's a really unique program to help students really prepare for the CPA exam. It's not a CPA exam prep program, but it is very aligned with the exam and the educational requirements that you do need to become certified. So if this is an area that interests you, I cannot tell you enough that it's worth the work. It's worth the time and effort to put into this direction of your career. And I'm happy to help you along your journey. So definitely reach out, and I wish you the best of luck. So thank you for signing in tonight. And I do hope that we're able to connect at some point. So thank you so much.